All right, cool. So hello and welcome to the More with Stumpo podcast with me, the host, Matt Stumpo. Today, my very special guest, I have Brad Pendleton. Brad, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, bud. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the donuts from Daylight Donuts that my wife works at. I know you're not going to eat them, but that's all right, man. So, how have you been, bud?
I'm good. Staying busy. Staying busy all the time.
Good, man. I know that you went to school at Greenwood.
Yep.
And you went to school actually just a grade beneath my sister, but I remember you from school, and to see where you're at now, I think is really awesome. So why don't you go ahead and kind of just tell everybody like what you do now and where you've been in your past to where you've gotten yourself today.
All right. Yeah. So right now I'm the assistant director of non-public schools for the Indiana Department of Education. What that means is pretty much an accredited non-public school throughout the state would kind of fall under my supervision. I monitor legal compliance with them. Part of that's the voucher program that Indiana has, which is pretty hot topic most of the time. Before that, I was a business analyst for the Hoosier Lottery. Totally opposite type of role, looking at numbers and sales and stuff like that. Went to school at IU down in Bloomington, majored in public finance. Kind of knew that's where I wanted to be. What I'm doing now isn't exactly what I thought I'd be doing, but I mean, I get to work with money and numbers and stuff like that, so it's still pretty similar. And yeah, went to Greenwood, graduated in 2009, moved back after college, kind of stayed here. Wife and I decided to stay here, and now we're raising another generation. So
that's right. You just had a set of twins.
Yep,
9 months ago.
Yep, 9 months old.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
identical twins there, folks. They're not fraternal.
Yeah,
that's my biggest thing. If you're a twin, you got to be identical, not fraternal. No, I'm kidding about that. That's awesome. I get so excited when someone tells me that they're having twins, or they had twins, or they have twins running their family. I have a high respect for people who have twins in their family, because I understand what it was like growing up, being a twin,
right,
and the destruction that we caused to my mother. And I'm surprised that she really kept us, because we were complete idiots the entire time growing up.
Yeah.
So you got your hands full, but I think it's going to be awesome. They're always going to have friends growing up.
Yeah.
So you are now currently, you are also a at-large city council member. Is okay to say we're at?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the city of Greenwood. So for the people who are watching, what does that actually mean?
Right. So pretty much every level of government sort of has its own, like the same format, where you have a level that kind of makes bills or ordinances or resolutions that then get passed on to the mayor, the governor, the president for final signatures and stuff like that. So city council really hears the resolutions, ordinances to pass on. If we don't approve them, they don't go anywhere. So things like rezoning for a neighborhood, rezoning for a warehouse, those things come to us. Approving the city budget, we look at all that kind of stuff. So the things that go around in a city, most of them go before the city council just to review and ideally be the voice of the people that voted for you and do what they think is in the best interest of the city. Obviously, that takes a little bit of balancing of, no, they don't want it, but do they really have all the facts, and kind of saying, are we doing what's best for the city if we don't approve this, and things like that. So yeah, we try and keep the ball rolling with the city and get things passed.
You said that since you were elected, so you're an elected, would it be official?
Yep,
elected official for the city of Greenwood. Do you have now I'm not as well educated on the city council stuff, just because I'm not paying attention to that as much as I can be.
Yeah.
But do you have districts that you stay in that you have to have voted for?
Yeah, so Greenwood has 6 districts, and they're really funky in the way that they're kind of measured out. But for at-large, it's the whole city. So there's 6 districts. We have 1 representative for each one, and then there's 3 at-large members. So 9 total on the city council, and I'm one of the at-large members for the entire city.
That is awesome. So with your degree of public finance, is that correct?
Yep.
Public finance. Okay. With your degree of public finance, what is your goal? Well, at the city of Greenwood on the council, what is your goal to bring the city to? Now with that background in finance, are you trying to keep everything in the budget kind of around where the guesstimate is for the next year? Or are you trying to allocate things so that way you guys can build the city? Is the question I'm trying to get to is what is your guys' goal? What is your goal that you would like to see for the city of Greenwood?
Right. So, city of Greenwood financially, I think the situation that our current mayor came into was not great financially, and he and the controller have done a good job at kind of riding the ship in that aspect.
The controller at that time?
Controller now.
The controller now. Who's the controller now again?
Greg Wright.
Greg Wright, okay. Because it used to be Adam Stone.
Adam Stone is like I forget his title, but he does a lot of planning and stuff like that. I think he might report to Greg, but they're in the same area. My thought when we look at financial stuff is it responsible the way that we're spending money? Is it the best way we can spend money? Have we checked alternatives, ways to answer problems? And really one of the main things that Greenwood faces with all that, and I know it's a hot topic, are tax abatements, which a tax abatement is essentially you're giving a company credit off their taxes that they don't have to pay. We're not giving them money. We're just saying you don't have to pay a certain percentage each year. And the one that gets to me is speculative buildings.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So a speculative building is a building, essentially a warehouse, that would be built with no tenant in mind. So it's essentially a shell that someone could move into. There is a demand down 65. I mean, Franklin's doing that, Whiteland's doing it. There's a demand for it. So it's kind of a necessary evil to build those, make them available for businesses to come. What we've seen are we're giving tax abatements with the same criteria or the same type of tax credit, in other terms, that we would give someone that comes as a known business. So say we have like Lion's Head that's come here and they got a 10-year abatement. Well, someone could come in and say, we want a speculative building. We can't promise you the number of jobs, how much they're going to pay, or when they'll be in there, but we want a 10-year abatement too. To me, that's not.
Do we do 10-year abatements here? Okay. I was under the impression we did a 5-year abatement.
There are 5-year abatements.
Which means, now let me get this straight. If I got this correctly, they're not paying taxes on the building or anything.
So there's there's building, and then there's like equipment that they can do for what goes in the building. Most of the time it's just the building. There are 5-year abatements. We have 5-year abatements, and then the way it's usually tiered is like year 1, 100% taxes. You don't have to worry about. Next year 90, and it goes down over time.
What's the idea on doing something like that? Now, in my head, logically what I'm trying to think is the reason why we're doing that is so that way we can get some big business coming in, so that way they can hire people here in Greenwood. And it's going to bring in an influx of merchandise or whatever the product that they're getting. And then other businesses are going to get attracted to it and start coming in. And people are going to start spending more money here while the people of Greenwood are getting jobs. Is that the idea?
That's a big part of it. It's mainly an incentive. I mean, that's the main thing. It's an incentive. Like if you come to Greenwood, like we can give you this incentive to come here financially. But when you're looking at places like Lion's Head, when they submit for an abatement, they can tell you this is how many jobs we're going to bring, or else we don't get the abatement. This is how much we're going to pay these jobs, or we're not going to get the abatement. So with the speculative building, it's essentially you'll get the same abatement, but we're not making you commit to jobs or salary or anything like that. And to me, that's not necessarily financially the greatest idea to incentivize someone to come in without all the answers. and then turn around and say, well, we'll give the same to you that has all the answers. So
That makes sense.
That's usually where I'm at odds with folks on the council.
Okay.
It's not a popular opinion.
What's their reasoning? If I know that you're not defending them,
Right,
or
yeah.
I'm not defending anybody on it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the topic. What is their reasoning of wanting to do that?
I think it's mainly there is a demand for it, and they want to be able to meet demand. A lot of the abatement agreement is done with the mayor prior to it coming to council. And so obviously I'm not in those discussions when that's being done. So I don't know everything that goes on there. But I think that's the main thing is, there's a demand for speculative buildings. We've approved them in the past. So there's kind of a precedent that we need to do it. I would say those are probably the two biggest things that usually lead people to say, yeah, why not give them a 10-year abatement? I'm just not one of those.
I understand. So with the abatements, let's say a big company comes in, they have a 5-year tax abatement.
Yep.
5 years comes up, they owe the full amount of money.
They could.
They
could. They can always try to, maybe extend it.
If they extend it, they can say, oh, you know what? We might pull out if you guys don't give us another 5-year or maybe even a 10-year abatement.
Right.
So they can do that.
They could. Yeah.
And then we wouldn't get that money for the first 5 years, the full amount for the first 5 years. And then now for the next 5 years, there's a possibility that they're still going to be getting out of it. For the big business. Potentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it all, again, whatever agreement's kind of made is made. What we're really looking at is, if you meet X, Y, and Z, you get the abatement. Most places will be here, 10 years. We've seen some businesses come in and say, we're going to take this much ground because we plan to expand in the future. So they may have a set number of jobs that they say they're going to hit over that course, but that's going to mean they need to expand, or they might ask for an abatement for the equipment that they're going to put in there as a result of that expansion. So there's other things they can do along the way. I think what we'll see, because once we start collecting those tax dollars, that's when the city starts recognizing that income, which again, kind of back to your question on why do you vote for a speculative building, is you can either have an open field that doesn't bring you any money, or you can have a building there that they're paying property tax on. And so eventually you make money on something you wouldn't have. That kind of cost benefit thing right there. So that's another reason people might vote for it.
So with increasing, not really much of the size of the city, but the amount of people in the city, of course, a business comes in, they might have 2,000 people working at their warehouse. If it's large enough, maybe even 1,500 people.
Yeah.
So with that comes the opportunity of having to increase law enforcement, having to increase the first responders protections there, and people who would be potentially getting injured. So with all of those businesses coming in, how much of that can really benefit for the local police departments, local fire departments, EMS agencies? How can that benefit them for the extra amount of population that would be coming in on a daily basis?
Yep. So right away it doesn't. I mean, day one of them being there, it doesn't necessarily help. But over time, as those property tax dollars do come in, it could, ease up funding that we could use to pay for a police officer, pay for a firefighter. So the more money we have coming in, we can move things around within a budget to say, okay, we have enough now that, we can do 3 more firefighters. We can do 5 more police officers, because that is an issue with Greenwood is we have great public safety, but it's understaffed. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I get pretty heated up about, especially fire. I mean, the fact that we have part-time firefighters drives me nuts, because sometimes they don't qualify for health benefits. And that we can't ask somebody to run into a burning building and say, well, if you get sick, what are we going to do? So that drives me up a wall a little bit. I know when I first decided to run for that office, one of the first things I said was, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything that goes on in the city. Mm-hmm. And I acknowledge that. So what I did was I sat down with a bunch of different people. One of them was Chief Hoggett. Mm-hmm. And I said,
who's the fire chief of Greenwood?
Right. And I said, what are some things you think I should know, things that I could be an advocate for firefighters? And we sat down and we talked for a while. That was one of the things that came up. I mean, I don't know. That was about 2 years ago, so I don't want to misquote too much, but there's not very many municipalities or cities the size of Greenwood that have part-time firefighters.
Correct.
I mean,
they're very correct.
There is a reason that Greenwood trains firefighters, gets good firefighters, and then they leave to go somewhere else because they're paid more, they get better jobs. And I hate that.
And with the training that Greenwood gives, it's in the state, from what I've seen, Greenwood does do a really good job with training their firefighters that they have. They have a very good job. And people call it like a puddle department. It's something that they'll skip over because they're going to get hired somewhere else because they're not getting hired full-time here. Yeah. It'd be I've heard from other departments when I've gone to classes about the city of Greenwood's fire department. I've heard about them. They'd say, like, oh, hey, where are you from? I'm like, oh, around the Greenwood area. And they're just like, oh man, like, that's the department to get on if you want to get trained and get out, because they're not hiring. And that's something that's been known. That's what I've been told about this department. Yeah.
And there's another issue that kind of ties into that. And it's not necessarily the city's fault. It's more at the county level, is the fire district. Here, I don't know how much you know about the fire district.
A pretty decent amount. Yeah.
Essentially what that means is there's a strip off of 135
corridor
in Greenwood, bound in the Greenwood city limits, that Greenwood does not get the property tax dollars for, and it goes to White River.
It's approximately about 2 million, or is it 2 or 4?
It's like 2 to 4, about $3 million.
It's around that area.
Which, I mean, when you're looking at firefighters, that's a few firefighters.
It's a couple of them.
Yeah. So there's things that can be done, and property tax is one way to kind of help with that. I mean, as people move into the city. And
now, are you? I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
For a lot of people, now I'm trying to be an advocate for both sides. For a lot of people coming into Greenwood, let's say they come in from a more Democrat-run city, and they say, we want to get away from the taxes. We want to get away from all this crap, the property taxes, the income taxes, the everything. We want to come here. I mean, it's a pretty good place to live. And where I live, it's a great place to live. And with the taxes being pretty low. So that's something that I'm a big proponent on, is keeping taxes. I'm a big proponent on keeping taxes low. Yeah, I really am. I'd rather have people bring in more money, because what's going to happen when you have more money? You're going to spend it on something.
Right.
What are you going to spend it on? Hopefully there's a good local business around that you can support and give your money to. I'm not a big fan of increasing taxes to do certain things in the city. That's just my opinion. Right. My opinion totally. Right. But with what you're about to bring up with residential property taxes, with the influx of neighborhoods that are being built, I think it's a great idea. Build up the neighborhoods. My opinion, don't increase the property taxes. Right. With the buildings, the residences being built, that will increase our base of property taxes that we're getting, which will be more helpful for when we're wanting to do certain things such as fire, police, EMS, whatever we decide as a city, whatever the city decides to do with it.
Right. And kind of to your point with businesses and looking at sort of the trickle effect of, like, as you add businesses, what happens to these complementary things. The same can be said when you build houses. What's that going to do to roads? What's that going to do to schools? What's that going to do to public safety? And so one thing that I've tried to do is every time we see a neighborhood is I'll email the superintendent and say, hey, are you good with this? Like, do you have any concerns? And so when I'm voting on things, I want to have as much feedback from the people that this directly affects and know a lot more about than I do. I mean, I have a background on certain things and I can do research on my own, but if somebody's building in Whiteland schools where I live, that doesn't really touch where I live. So I'll email, Dr. Spray, and I'll say, is this too many houses? Like, is this going to overcrowd you guys? And And usually that feedback's pretty positive because, again, just like we get property taxes, the more kids they get funding at the school level. But public safety is one of those things that usually when we have people, it's like, well, here's another set of people that we're asking these firefighters to go run and do all this stuff, or these police to protect, and they're already stretched. So I think it's definitely something that I try and keep in mind. And I told Chief Hoggett when he told me about the fire district, I'll fight for that. I mean, I don't really care who I piss off in the meantime, but I'll be a fly on somebody like poop, like waiting for them to do something about it, because I think he said it's one of like 2 fire districts in the entire state of Indiana. I mean, it was something that was it was practiced a long time ago, and a lot of them just kind of got dissolved. And for some reason, Johnson County's holding on to it. And I think it's hurting people that we really depend on, and people that are great at their job. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox on that one. But
this is a soapbox for you.
I guess this is the place to get on the firebox.
It's a huge thing. That's a huge thing to be talking about. And also, I'm also involved in a firefighting podcast as well, and even to talk about I've mentioned about doing a kind of like a finance not a course, but like, hey, this is what happens with the finances for the counties and then the local cities or even townships that goes towards the fire department, which this can really help out a lot, just explaining it to people, because a lot of people in the city, I'll hear people talk about, I go, hey, cool, we're building more residences and more neighborhoods, so fire department getting another firehouse, or the police hiring more guys. It's like, not right now, no. Right. It'd be nice. It'd be very nice. I would say that it would be nice to be fully staffed and not be running at 3, which could be pretty dangerous to do that. Right.
And it's a slow thing. As we do get those property tax dollars, it's, we can do 1 or 2 here or there, but where we're at, it's going to take a lot of 1 or 2 here or there as people are retiring, as people are leaving. I mean, it's a constant add-on, and as you add people, you need to add more. So
there's a lot that it's expensive to get a fireman. Yeah, it's expensive.
Because you got their salary, then you have their health coverage, and you got their retirement,
the gear on top of that. And that gear's not cheap either.
Yeah. I mean, there's all those additional costs just on top of their pay. That when you're writing down, what's the cost of a firefighter on paper, I mean, you have to add these certain things up, and it's not cheap, but we need it.
Yeah, we definitely.
In short, we need it.
What's something that people people watching? What about people at home in the civilian side? What's something that they can do to have their voices be heard?
Yeah, number one, it's not necessarily your voice physically, but vote. Sitting here, I got enough votes, and I did pretty well in the election, but I think the year I got elected, Greenwood had, or even Johnson County, it might have been, had 5 to 7% voter turnout.
Wow.
And that's disheartening because of all the people you can vote for, president, senator, state representatives, your city council and your mayor impact your life directly with everything they do. Everything. I'm not advocating for you not to vote for your president, but if you really want to see change or things done, vote in your local elections. If you see something that's not going well, go to a city council meeting. Obviously, right now, public is not allowed physically in our meetings. They have to get on Zoom.
Sounds like a conspiracy theory.
I'm
real big on conspiracy. I love conspiracy theories.
To be totally transparent, it's a whole lot more compelling when you have a line of physical individuals in front of you telling you how impactful a project is or detrimental something is to them. We've certainly heard things that, it probably would have been more compelling, or I would have liked to have more people there that we voted on since I've been in office. I'm going on the start of year 2, but we've had things that people were upset about, and it probably would have maybe changed a few votes of other people to have a line of people saying, you know, I'm upset by this. So just being involved in, you know, not just typing comments on the city, like Facebook posts and things like that.
I see that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. That's fine. But that's not going to move change. Change is emailing your representatives. I mean, we all have emails. They're on the city website. Our cell phone numbers are on the city website. I mean, getting a hold of us is very public knowledge. But number one, voting. It kills me. I mean, Greenwood has, I'm going to butcher this number, tens of thousands of people.
Last time I checked, 64,000 or 67,000.
Yeah.
Last I checked.
And
I can look that up actually right now.
I was elected with just over 1,600 votes.
It's embarrassing of a number.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand. I meet a lot of people all the time, and they're not into politics.
Right.
I totally get it. But you mentioned something about Joe Biden or Donald Trump, and they're heated.
Right.
And it's like, well, did you vote in your local? And they're like, no.
Right.
This can really affect you. This is
Right.
how cities. I mean, you look at cities across America. You look at how many red cities there are versus how many blue cities there are. All the major cities, they're going to be blue. It's the truth. But everything outside of it is always red. But if we can stay on top of it and keep people involved, and we keep people interacting with it, it makes it so much better.
Right.
But another hard thing is people aren't going to come out until they're pissed off.
Right.
That's another thing too. Like, I didn't start getting involved in politics until I started getting a little pissed off about what was going on.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I need to research, because I don't want to be that guy going into a discussion not knowing what I'm talking about. And that's another tough thing, because if you have too much heat on you, then something must be clearly going wrong where people are getting upset.
Yeah. Yeah, and that leads to just like two different things I'll say on that is all these folks that were on Facebook, you know, posting your vote counts, I'm sitting back saying, well, did you vote in your local election? Because your vote counts a whole lot more in those. And I forget what the other thing I was going to say.
That's all right. I just looked up how many people live in Greenwood, but it's saying as of 2019, 57,000. But I remember it being more than that. I'm seeing 60,000. So let's just go with around 60,000 people.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. The thing, too, is regardless of where you live in the city, you can essentially vote for 4 people on the council. You've got your 3 at large, and then your 1 district. So me personally, I can go in and vote the total opposite of the rest of the council, and that's not going to change anything. So I mean, it takes a lot of work of changing a majority of the council to really drive the change. Like, I can get in there and, you know, yell up and down and throw whatever I want, and it doesn't necessarily get anything done. So it's definitely something where you need to research. Mm-hmm. You need to listen to the people that you're voting for, because local politics is all about a name. And some people, you'll even ask them, who'd you vote for? And they'll say, oh, so-and-so. And you say, why? Oh, it was the last sign I saw walking in to vote. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So it's a head scratcher. Local politics is, I would like to think I was a beneficiary of name recognition. Mm-hmm. But I also hope that by the time I get mm-hmm. on the next ballot, it's, oh, well, this is what he did. And people are proud of that. So I'm hoping to drive that change in local politics around here so that they can say, oh, well, that's who this person is. And they've made me aware of what this is. That's
a pretty good idea. And I think it's a good plan.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things, and I can't believe it was a year ago, one of the things that I started about a year ago and I guess I actually brought it back technically, was town hall meetings in each district to kind of just meet with people in the district. The other at-large representatives were invited. The district representative was invited, and we'd sit down and, we'd kind of cover, here are the projects in your area. What are some concerns you have about your area? And, the turnout ranged from one person to 20 people. And that's not a big number, but, if we can educate somebody or they're mad about something and we say, this is why it happened. And then they can go tell somebody, well, this is what I heard. Or they go to their HOA or their Facebook page and they say, oh, well, the council explained this. We understand it a little bit better now. That's a win. And it may not be an answer they like. But one thing that I learned out campaigning was if you're honest with somebody and you can tell them why and not just say, I voted yes or I voted no, and that's it, they take it a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Because they know that you aren't just being lazy or you're just, being a stick in the mud or something like that. So there's things that I would like to do that COVID's really kind of cracked down on my ability to do that. But I hope that once it eases up that we can start getting folks involved again.
The way that you explain answering the why, it comes back to good communication. I've been blessed to have some really cool experiences in my life. Last year I got to do something really awesome. I got to go to DC and see where laws are presented and where they're made and then where they're thrown out, and then where people just get so upset with what's going on in the world. I get to see that place. And there was a couple representatives that I got to talk to, and senators and congressmen and congresswomen that I got to talk to, that I was like, and I talked to a couple Democrats that I remember seeing on the news that I'm like, they're the devil. Like these people are horrible. And I talked to them like, they're just normal people. Right. They're just normal people. Now there were some that were like, they are mean. Like they have a horrible perspective on how I would view a good life to be. But to sit and listen to them talk of their reason why, it's not done in media. I don't believe it's truly done fairly in media. It's not truly done. And I remember even locally on a smaller scale, there was a referendum that they were trying to pass in Center Grove. And it was Joe Hubbard. I talked to him about it. And I said, hey, man, I'm hearing some people that aren't happy about it. They don't want it. Can you tell me why we need it or why you guys need it? Because I don't live in Center Grove. And he was telling me the reason why they think they need it. Right. And he had an understanding of why people don't want it. He said, but it's kind of, in my opinion, I'm kind of just outweighing the safety of children. The safety of my kids that are in the school right now. He said, if it helps one kid and we increase taxes on it a little bit, I understand. He said it comes up about $200 a year. I believe that was a number. Somebody will be there or whatever. They'll figure it out. Yeah. But the why of it, that was a really good example. The why, answering the why makes it so much better. There's so many things that happen in my line of work that I'm like, well, why? And then they say, just because. Well, that doesn't answer. That makes me pretty angry that you say that, because now you're not answering my question. Now I don't want to do it. So answering the why is huge. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I have worked on myself is if I'm not going to vote for something, I need to be able to back it up. Or if I don't like something, I need to be able to give how we solve it. If there's a problem, how do we solve it? I've never been a fan of, well, it's what we've done before. It's status quo. Screw that. Screw that. That doesn't mean it's the best. Just because we've done it before doesn't mean there's not a better way. So one thing that I promised when I ran, and I've done my best to stay up on it, is before every council meeting, I post on my city Facebook page the agenda. I outline what we're going over and what my stance is and why.
That's awesome.
So it's in print. Before I go to the meeting, people know where I'm at.
That is awesome.
And then after the meeting, I say, here's what happened in the meeting. Here was the vote. And so I think it helps be a little transparent. I think that's a big thing in the city, is to be transparent. And that hasn't always been the case. And, you know, if not, I always hated going up to somebody and them hearing, well, I didn't know what happened until after it passed. And it's like, well, that really sucks. But there's really no good way to get that out there. If people aren't willing to do it themselves, I mean, even what I do on Facebook, I can't make people read it. I mean, I think, you know, 95 people read it. That's fine, but that's 95 people that maybe didn't know beforehand what was going on. And you hit the nail on the head. There's people that coming into city government, I was like, man, that person just sucks. Like, their voting sucks. And you talk to them and you hear why they do it. And it's like, you know what? That makes sense. I don't agree, but it's a whole lot better than, well, that's just why.
Yeah. There was a guy that I worked with before, and I really like him, but he's a very different person. But he comes from a completely different state where it's very far left. And let's say that there was maybe some riots there that's been going on almost the last year, and that there was maybe a autonomous zone named Chaz that was there. Let's say he was from that area, but he's got a completely different outlook on how life should be, and he's like, we should help the less fortunate. We should be paying more in taxes to help bring these people up. And at first when he was saying it, I'm like, that's the dumbest idea, because what is going to happen when you're just giving people money? What's going to happen? They're just going to keep spending it on crap that have put them there in that place. How do we get them to build themselves up? We've got to get, yes, it does take some funding to get people there to educate them on how to better themselves. Just throwing money at the situation never solves anything. We have to educate this. We have to educate them on how to survive in the system. Yeah. And there's so many things that go into it. It's, you know, we don't have, thank God, we don't have the issues that a lot of other large cities have, gang violence and a lot of high crime. Thankfully, we don't have that. But a lot of other cities, they do have that. And a lot of those cities a lot of them are Democrat-run cities. And with the policies that they have, I'm glad that the city of Greenwood is not anything close to like that with crime and with gang violence and all that kind of stuff. But to talk to somebody from that city that still has that same mindset of, you know, being more to the left, like I don't agree with you at all, but I understand now why you have that opinion.
Right. Yeah. Two of probably my best friends in life are Democrats. We don't agree about political stuff that much, but you know what? We have a common respect of, you know what? If that's what you believe, that's fine. Just, they know I just don't agree. Yeah. And that's fine. And the thing too, that kind of going back to what you said about meeting politicians, is there's nothing different between you and a politician. There's nothing. They just got elected. Yes. They decided to run and they got elected. That's the only difference. Their background or something like that didn't put them in that spot. They got elected. And the whole reason that I chose local politics is really, and even though I said local politics, local government is, it should be the least politically driven. What makes a good politician is a person that listens and a person that fights for the people that put them there and not self-interest. That makes a good politician. Now, are you always going to make your constituents happy? No, you're not. Because kind of like I said, there's things that your constituents are going to say that you have more information or data on that they don't, and they're just misinformed or something like that. So you're not always going to vote that way. But if you can tell them why you didn't, I mean, you should, that's how good representatives stay in spots for a long time, is they listen, they don't, drive self-interest, things like that, because they're just people. They're just people. And so, people that worship, senators and things like that, it's like, that's just some dude. Yeah. And yeah, he's done some good stuff for your beliefs, but he's some dude. Anybody can decide to run and be a politician.
Yeah, and that's another good statement to make. For local citizens in whatever city, township, whatever, wherever you're at, just know that if you don't like the way things are, you can always step up and lead, and you can run for that office there.
Yeah.
And I know a couple people who have mentioned running for local politics, and I think that's pretty admirable. I know. Well, I had Joe Hubbard on, and he didn't like the way things were going at the school where his children go, and he's like, no, I think it became down to where boys can go into girls' bathrooms. And I think he was one of the dads there that was like, this is stupid. I can't have a young boy going to a bath. We know I was a young boy once. I know what they're going to do.
Right.
And he stood up and he became a leader. And it really surprised me, for one, that he got it. Like, I was like, dude, no one's going to vote. You don't look like a politician. Like you look like the guy that works on their cars. Like you, tattoo sleeves, bald head. You're always wearing tank tops and shorts with tennis shoes. Like,
yeah.
You're not getting it.
Right.
But I'm like, I'm a vote for you if I could. I can't. But I'm like, you got this, man. But I don't know. It's a tough. He got it.
Yeah.
He went there and he had a good argument, and he's just your average Joe. And I think that's what his campaign slogan was.
That would be a genius campaign slogan.
It's a really good I think we either talked about it or that's actually what he did. I keep hitting this thing. That's either actually what he did or we talked about it. Yeah, but I was surprised. So yes, you can step up, and you can. It's a lot of work, a lot of stress, I would imagine, but you can do it. You can totally do it, and you can even be like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, and you can beat.
Maybe not exactly.
You don't want to be. You don't want to be like her, but she did put the work in to get that spot. She did put the work in, but I mean, she was a bartender.
Yeah,
and I don't agree with about 99.999% of stuff that comes out of her mouth. But she put the work in to get there.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Tiff, because I'm sure you know a lot about Tiff. I had Jay Hart on recently, and he spoke about it just a little bit. And I'd love to have him back on to talk about it. I don't know every single little detail about it. All I hear is a couple little things and how it could be good for where I work. Right. So can you explain Tiff? I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know a ton about it, or at least a lot more than me or even Jay.
Yeah. Well, Jay knows it pretty well.
Okay.
Jay and I have different stances on it.
Okay.
From the financial aspect, it's a great tool. I think Jay even admits that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of definitions with Tiff are in law. I mean, there's some things that you can move around with it, but the uses of it and things like that.
Sorry, I'm having my protein shake.
Oh, you're fine.
Get the protein in.
I don't think you need to get any bigger.
I can totally get so much bigger.
I think it's a good tool if used correctly. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of school corporations aren't huge proponents at the start of TIF. And the reason being, when you establish a TIF district and money is generated in TIF, it goes to the city and all this. And usually a TIF district has a lifespan of, 20, 30 years. So a big lifespan. But once it's up, all that money flows to the schools. So it doesn't benefit schools directly.
So you say 20 to 30 years, and then the schools will get benefited.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I want my teachers in my city, I want my teachers to get paid pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't want them making over 120 G's, but like I want them being paid well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So me, let's say I'm a citizen of Greenwood. I'm not. Let's say I'm a citizen of Greenwood, and we get a TIF district, and that means that school. So that you're telling me that means that school for about 20 to 30 years won't get
it won't get the full capacity of what it could.
It could. But it does get something.
Yeah.
It gets something, but not what it could for 20 to 30 years.
Yeah. Eventually it will die out. It'll be developed. We've kind of recouped cost at the city level. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, here you go, schools. Like, here you go. So, so superintendents that you talk to about TIF usually aren't huge fans of it, rightfully so. But it is a good way to drive change within the city. So,
quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I apologize. For the money that goes to the school, is that only allocated for supplies, or the building, or is that allocated towards salaries?
I'd have to dig into the specifics
Or
of that.
is it whatever the school decides?
I'm leaning towards that.
Okay.
That sounds about right. I'm not sure there's anything. Once we give it to the school, I'm not sure we require them to do anything with that. That would be more of like a Department of Ed type of thing, which I guess I could answer that, but
I was going to say, didn't you do that?
I work with private schools.
Today.
I work with private schools. Leave me alone.
So I want to ask you about private schools afterwards. So please remind me on that, because that's something that I don't have a lot of education on as well. So we'll finish this discussion and then, well, not this discussion, this topic, and then we'll move around a little bit more, and then we can talk about private schools.
So I think it's a great way to drive money. There's not a lot of other ways to drive money to the city as well as Tiff does. And so I don't think I think Tiff is pretty well established in Greenwood. I'm not sure there's much room for us to even establish another Tiff district. So they're all kind of in use right now. I know we have some on the east side. We have 135 is a Tiff district. So, but you can say that there's usually some uses from TIF funds that I wouldn't say are the best uses of TIF funds.
What would be a good example of that?
If you're using it for, projects that, let's say you're doing, well, here, let me back up. I would say good uses of funds, either directly from TIF or money that's freed up by TIF, infrastructure, public safety, and just like a business project to drive the economy. Those are the three main things that I would say. Use that money, beef up your infrastructure, make sure your roads are good, make sure your sewer's good, make sure all that's good. Beef up your public safety, make sure they're staffed. Beef up your projects. So if we have like a piece of land that doesn't look great, put a park, put something there. Now, not all of that's permissible under TIF, but
or really is it not really generating money when after it's built? It's just something that's nice, but it is something that's it could be a beautiful park, and then families are coming and creating memories there. So there's stuff like that. Right.
Well, I mean, parks boost home values. So those people that live closer to a park,
think of that,
their home value just went up. So it's things like that I think are good. I just think some projects have been selected for TIF. May not be the best, but it definitely is bringing in money that the city could use. And not all of it. I don't want it to seem like we're not using TIF great at all. I mean, we do. We do, just not, I wouldn't say 100%.
Okay. So when you say some of the good uses, law enforcement, fire, public safety, let's call it that. With that money, now I'm trying to still understand this, and also hopefully the people listening in. So with TIF, that means you're just borrowing money on something that we haven't paid for yet.
Yeah, so might be a bond.
So it's borrowing money from the future.
Yep.
Okay, so who pays for that at that point?
At that point, the city, so the way bonds usually work is the city will pay for a bond to pay for a project, and then the city pays back on that bond.
And the city is in the people paying their taxes into it.
Yeah, any sort of money that the city has, it's kind of going into the general fund and things like that.
Okay, so anything at all, business, big business, small business, civilians that are people living in residences, all that stuff comes and it'll pay for that off.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that go into, like, if let's say a city, doesn't matter, one city, multiple cities, does that go into like the debt budget? Sorry, that's a hard word to say.
Yeah. Well, bonds are considered debt. Bonds are considered.
It's considered debt.
You
so
consider
it'll
a bond
up.
debt. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything that the city owes money on, you would consider debt technically. But things like TIF, again, they generate money. So sometimes you might hear folks not include bonds from TIF because you're making that money constantly. I mean, the way Greenwood has it, it's going to make its money back. It's just going to take time.
And you said 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And that's what would suck for me listening to hear that. Like if I was sitting here listening to this conversation with somebody else, I'd be like, this sucks. 20 to 30 years? Like I probably won't be here.
Right.
Like me specifically, I might not be here. You never know. I might just walk outside and slip and fall. But like it's a long time. So what are some of the, you gave some of the good examples. What are some of the bad examples of Tiff? If you can think of. And if you don't want to, if there's some that are just too specific that you don't want to talk about, that's completely okay.
Yeah.
The spotlight's not on you.
I mean, things that don't directly benefit citizens. So things that citizens can't use, things that, aren't consumed by your everyday resident. Which to me, that's what you should be using your money for. Things that are being used or consumed by your residents for their benefit. Anything outside of that, it's kind of like, who are we helping here? Because like you said, 20, 30 years, that sucks. Mm-hmm. That sucks. So why not put it towards something that makes that suck less or does benefit them? Where it's like, yeah, we're trading off 20, 30 years, but we have this project. We have these things to show for it where, it's kind of worth it. It's money that we use to bring this that we wouldn't have had if we didn't have TIF. So it's kind of that trade-off if it's used properly, that you're bringing something to a city, you're bringing something to residents that if it weren't for TIF, you might have to add houses, collect property tax to pay for a project like that over the same amount of time. We're just trying to, beef it up so that as we have this project, people can build houses and we get the property taxes at the same time. So timeline stinks waiting for it to kind of expire, but it builds up the city at the same time that we're trying to focus on other things.
Okay. So
if that makes any sense.
That makes sense. So, man, it'd be great to have Jay on too at the same time, and you guys just go back and forth on it. I love Jay to death, man. Yeah. He is one wild.
I was actually surprised you got a single word in on his.
Oh,
sorry, Jay, but
yeah, I love Jay to death. He is such a good guy, but like when you start talking, like if you say something and he gets going, it's like his brain is just firing at 100 miles an hour. I love watching him because he's just like. And then he just goes. It's like good. It's great word vomit. I love it. So like, there's nothing. It's easy. Yeah. It is. He has been by far the easiest person for me to interview because I say, Tiff.
Yeah.
And then he's just 30 minutes. He'll talk about it, and I'll say, Capitol building, and then he's just going. I love it.
I started going to city council meetings the year leading up to the election. Mm-hmm. Since then, I've missed 2 meetings. Mm-hmm. One was recently. I had to take my dog to the ER vet. He's fine, but I was at the ER vet. The second one, I met Jay to talk before a meeting, and he talked so much that I missed the meeting. So I totally understand about that. But yeah.
And Jay's a great guy. I'm not just saying that just because I'm being recorded right now. I truly think he's got people's best interests at heart, and he's a good man of faith too. Mm-hmm. So I think that's extremely important, especially for someone to try to be to being a representative, is having a strong faith and somebody who's not afraid to stand up and be the only person to say, I don't agree with that.
Right.
I think that's awesome. And to be as talkative as he is, that's awesome.
Yeah, and won't lie. I mean, Jay and I have come to terms that there's some things I don't agree with what he says, but I'll tell him that, and he'll tell me when he doesn't. Of course, Jay will tell me when he doesn't agree with me, but I'll tell him. I was like, nah. I'm like, sorry, Jay, but no. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's a fun guy to debate with.
He's great. I would like to see a debate. I got a third microphone now, so if I could find somebody else that would be more on the left side that would want to come on and do it.
Not with Jay, probably. Not.
I'd be like, I'll be the referee for this one.
Yeah, you'll need a mute button for Jay or something.
That would be a lot of fun. I love Jay to death. And his episode that we did together, I think it's a really good episode. If you guys want to watch it, you guys can watch it.
Good episode. I recommend it.
Yeah. So private schools. Sorry.
Yeah.
So with private schools, there's a lot of teachers unions that out there that don't like the charter schools and the private schools and all that stuff. So what was your job there working? Now, can you say what the title was again for the private school industry or the
assistant director of
non
non-public schools?
Non-public. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Private.
The same thing.
So with the non-public schools, so what did you have to deal with while there?
Yeah, so I'm still there.
So you're still there. Okay.
Yeah, counsel's like a part-time thing.
Now, I get the counsel in my head, and I'm like, full-time job.
Yeah.
Every time I'm like, full-time gig. So okay.
Yeah. So what was your question?
My question is, what do you have to deal with there? Like, what does that entail completely?
Yeah. So a bulk of it is the voucher program.
Can you explain that for people who don't know?
The state has a program called the Choice Scholarship Program, and it came into being in the 11-12 school year. And when it was written, it was meant for low-income families to have an option to financially afford non-public school if they wanted it. That's still the intent of it. It's grown significantly. I mean, the first year that the program was around, there were like 3,900 kids in it, and now there's 37,000.
Wow.
So it's one of the biggest voucher programs in the nation.
So why would people want... I kind of have an idea of already why. But why do people, especially low-income families, why would they want their child to go to a private, non-public school? Sorry, I sound like an idiot. Want to go to school? No, why would they want to go to a non-public school?
Right. Yeah. So there's usually a few reasons. I mean, some folks want their kid to have a religious education, and that's pretty straightforward. Maybe they don't like their public school, or their kids having trouble at the public school. Could be that it's not a good public school.
Not saying that all public schools are bad.
Right. in that parent's eyes, it's not a good school. And so they've made that choice that, we want to move out of the public school. And then you have your kids that, regardless of the program, they were going to go to a non-public school anyway. So yeah, that's really why kids are in it. And the way that Indiana has set it up is it's not any kid makes it. There's income guidelines, and then there's specific criteria that a student has to meet to qualify. I mean, they could meet criteria financially, but not meet the other criteria, and they don't qualify. So it's not like floodgates open up and anybody comes in and gets a scholarship. So there's hurdles that families still have to get over, even if they're low income.
So for me, thinking on me as a private citizen, not involved with that at all, I want everyone to have school of choice. And I don't want that because of public schools. I want them to go. No, I don't want them to go away. I want everything to get better. Right. And it comes down on an individual basis. There are a lot of good public school teachers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good private school teachers. And I'm sure there's a lot of bad ones. It comes down to that. But I've heard the not much of an expression, but I've heard the argument and discussion of moving out of a lot of inner city schools because they get funding to it, and the teachers aren't. Now, this is just listening from what other people's arguments were. Students aren't learning anything in there. They're coming out of it failing classes. And their parents are like, I need to take you to a different school, but we're stuck here at this school.
Right.
And they're stuck in that round. And the teachers aren't getting disciplined for not doing their job, is from what the parents and then everyone else were arguing about. And then I believe Trump did a school of choice program. That was something that he was pushing for, at least.
Well, his education secretary was very pro school choice.
Yes.
Very pro school choice. And so, yeah, I would say it was probably pushed more, but that does... Just because Washington, D.C. is like that doesn't necessarily... It didn't change anything that I was doing.
Okay.
The program, the Choice Scholarship Program, was the same today as it was under Donald Trump, as it was under Obama. I mean, so regardless of sort of what they wanted or don't want, if our state legislature doesn't change anything, it stays the same.
Okay. I like school of choice because it gives the parents the ability to say, or even talk to the child and say, hey, what school do you want to go to?
Right.
Like, because we can get you to it. If they want to go to the school that's next city over, it's like, hey, you know what? We can do that. And it's a better school for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will
tell me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff too. I'm still learning.
I will note these are my views and not the views of my employer. I have to put that in there.
Yeah.
So the way that it's usually viewed, there's really 3 viewpoints when it comes to Indiana's voucher program. The way that it pays out to students is the most a student can be paid at a non-public school is 90% of what they would get at the public school. So we don't pay the same amount per kid.
Okay, so for somebody at home, each child is worth a certain amount of money to the public school.
Yeah, each corporation sort of has its own calculation that it goes through and says, okay, per student, this is how much you get. And then during the year, they claim the students they have, and Department of Ed makes payments. So since we don't pay that full amount, I won't get into the weeds on how we calculate award amounts, but the most a student gets paid is 90%. And so one viewpoint is it saves the state money. If a kid goes from public school there, we save 10% right off the top. The second viewpoint is it's what's best for the student, which in my eyes, that's the biggest thing. We shouldn't force a student to stay in an environment that is not good for them or their learning. That's my big thing.
It's kind of, if what you're saying is true, it'd be kind of scary to hear from somebody else that disagrees with that.
Well, that's where the last viewpoint kind of comes from. And again, I won't say anybody's wrong in the situation, but the last one is it takes money away from public schools. That's one you hear the most from. That's the one you hear from public school and the public school teacher unions, because that student is now getting money to go to a non-public school that some people believe they shouldn't get. They're choosing not to go to public school, and so that public school is missing out on that student's funding, and that's what you'll hear a lot. And I mean, again, yeah, that kid might not have gone to a non-public school, and yeah, that might be $6,000, but if that's what's best for the kid and that's what the parent thinks, then go for it. And the families that the program's striving to get to are ones that without that can't take them out of that public school that they're not succeeding in. And so I'm a fan of the program. Now, even with a mom that works at a non-public school that's not in the choice program, my kids are going to go to Greenwood schools. I've already made that decision. So it's not a matter of I think non-public schools are superior. It's nothing like that. And most people, it's not like that. It's let's do what's best for the kids. Screw the money portion of it. Screw this or that. Nobody's out to get other schools with it. We just want these kids to succeed. And right now, I mean, education is super important, whether it's virtual or not. And we talked about education, and if a kid's struggling, we need to do everything we can to make sure they get into a place to succeed, because everybody deserves that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good idea to have. I like competition. Mm-hmm. Recently, I just had on Dave Bowers on for the podcast, and that dude is one of the most competitive people I've ever met. And I think it's very healthy. He has a healthy competitiveness about him. And I think having competition in even the professional field and having competition in even the public schooling, there should be competition out there because it's going to drive people to do better. I think it should be seen as more of a competition. Like,
right,
we're going to compete to see who's the better school. That's who's going to give the best product to the child. How is this child going to learn best? Like, I remember when I was in school, I wasn't much of a great learner for stuff that was reading a book or just listening to them talk about a lecture. But if I got my hands on something, if there's a way they can figure out how to teach English while putting your hands on stuff, except for a book, I'd be an A+ student. If I'm working with my hands, if there was a program out there like Central 9 for me, that would have excelled me even farther, and who knows where I would have been.
Right.
If we're creating competition to increase knowledge base for the student and for the teachers to compete to create a better product for the kid, and they're increasing, what's the harm in that?
Right.
And it can increase a lot of stress for teachers. I understand. Right. And then funding, that's another problem for it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that play into it.
But real quick on that part, I just want to kind of say it before I forget this. But with saying that, there's a lack of funding in schools. There truly is. And I'm not the biggest proponent of going to school, like public schools. I'm not the biggest proponent of it. I'm not the biggest proponent of giving everyone a raise. I think it should be more of competition. If you this is just my thoughts, and my thoughts are open to changing at any point too. If you have the best school, if you are the best public school or the best private school, your teachers are probably going to be getting paid pretty well because you're the best. And it's not just because you're only the best. The work that you provide, the students that are coming out of it with the knowledge and the know-how, other people are going to see that and be like, I want my kids to go there. And you get more of an influx of students. You're going to get an increase of money coming in because it was competition driven. And now you've got more people coming in, feeding money to that school. And now they can use that money to allocate towards, better funding for the teachers, increased salaries for teachers. That would be something, instead of, in my opinions only, protecting the teachers that have a lot of the tenure that don't really do I remember I had teachers that did not do their job, but they had tenure and they were protected. To me, that's a huge issue with a lot of that stuff. And I have that issue with other fields as well. But I think if you make it more competitive, it's going to be better. Right. And then, you go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, where you usually get arguments with that is it's hard to be competitive when you're losing students and not getting that funding because it's not necessarily, more money equals better results. That's not necessarily true. That's not really true in any field. I mean, you can look at several examples of you can have as much money in the world, but if you don't have a good person working on it.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Tell Joe to go away.
I got to show you his contact ID photo. It's pretty funny.
But yeah, so some people will push back and be like, well, it's hard to be competitive when you don't have the money because the kids left. Which I think there's some truth to it.
There's a lot of truth to that. And where's the motivation?
Right.
And I understand that as a non-teacher, I couldn't be a teacher. There's no way. I could be like a hands-on teacher. Like if I could teach like how to put together a table. That's really, but I couldn't be a teacher and grabbing kids' attention. I'm not good at that.
Right.
But I would imagine like if I'm wanting to start a business, I'm not going to have an influx of money coming in. I mean, but look how many successful businesses are out there. Somebody started from the bottom,
right? And
they had no money, but they created a good product. They've worked hard for it. I understand it'll suck. It'll suck a lot when you're a teacher and you're literally driving against the stream to create a good product for these students. And I see that a lot. I see a lot of teachers, especially on Facebook. I'm friends with a few teachers. I see a lot of the stuff that they do. It looks great. It looks awesome. I understand the funding's not there, but if it's more of if the school comes together and says, hey, if we drive a better product, if we create better students, people are going to want to come here.
Right.
And then we'll get an influx of money. Yep. That's how I believe. That's how I think it would go. I would think it'd go like that, but then again, I'm just Matt Stumpo.
It can go like that. I mean, you have places like Greenwood where... See, my parents graduated from Greenwood, and Greenwood School District is kind of landlocked as far as growth. We can't really go out. We've got Center Grove and then Whiteland and then Southport. And so it doesn't necessarily grow, and it's hard for some to grow students. I mean, you can, but it will attract people moving in when you do that. And part of that is having good teachers. And I think that's where Johnson County is super lucky. I know Joe talked about it in his. I mean, Center Grove's good school district. Greenwood's great school district. Whiteland has good results too. I mean, the non-public schools in Greenwood, we have good non-public schools too. I mean, it's just a great area for education. I mean, we're very lucky, and that definitely played into why my wife and I decided to stay here.
For education, Greenwood's got it going on. I truly believe that. Yeah. And I had a good education at Greenwood. Yeah. There's always bad apples, but I had I've had a pretty good education. And with Central 9, dude, that place kicks ass. I love it. Yeah, that place is awesome.
A lot of options around here. A lot of
options.
Yeah, love it.
It'd be hard pressed to find something that you don't enjoy while in the education center, either it be high school, middle school, elementary, or
CT,
Central 9,
career and tech ed.
Yes. So, a couple more questions. Yeah. I like to make them real long, but a lot of other people don't like to watch the whole entire thing. Yeah. So we're over an hour right now, which is awesome. But I do have a couple more questions, and then we can just kind of close. So, what is something that, as the city, I'm not saying you as a representative of the city, what's something that, how can they help small businesses? How can we help small businesses as civilians?
I mean, the obvious answer is buy stuff, use them. That's the main thing, especially right now. I mean, I can't imagine being a small business right now, and in a pandemic and things like that. I think you look at places like Franklin have done a great job partnering with small businesses. They have someone in the city building that, is sort of a liaison between them and the small businesses. And they work together on things. And that's something that Greenwood doesn't have that I wish we did.
What would it take? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What would it take to do something like that? Because honestly, I'm a small business guy. I want them to thrive.
Right.
So what would it take for that to happen?
I think it's a discussion between the small businesses and the city and figuring out, how can we best help, but it also not being a huge hindrance on things going on in the city building. So it's a win-win on both sides, and one side's not sort of hemorrhaging anything. The other thing, and this has been something that I've seen, and again, I have some great ideas I would love to sit down and make sort of like a Devour downtown for Greenwood. I mean, Greenwood has great restaurants. They do. They have great restaurants that I love going to. My biggest issue with Greenwood and business right now is I feel like, and this is just sort of like a term I use, Greenwood's an in and out. You go in for dinner and you leave. There's nothing to do. I mean, you have axe throwing. We have a cigar bar now. When it's nice, you can sit on a patio. We have the amphitheater in the summer. But there's nothing, say Franklin, you have 10 pins. You have duck pin bowling. You have these different things that you can go.
That bar down there. What's it called? Over by the college.
Oh, Jeff Street?
Bojack's.
Oh, yeah.
Bojack's. They got Bojack's down there.
Yeah. And there's these things that you go downtown and you stay downtown.
Yeah.
Like, it's not you go in for one thing and you're gone. I would love to see more room for businesses where we can put things in to attract people. Don't just come for dinner and stay. Like, we've got other stuff.
That would be really cool, like having a bar downtown Greenwood. Yeah. Like a legit bar. You go, there's music playing. I remember when I was single. I am married now, happily married, and I'm not doing any of that stuff. But when I was single, I'm like, I wish there was a place I could go in Greenwood.
Right.
But there's nothing. There was nothing for me to go to, and I had no desire to be in Greenwood.
Yeah, and it still kills me. I have some of my best friends from growing up, grew up in Greenwood, went to college with them, and when we graduated, they moved to Indianapolis or Northside because they were like, well, that's where I'm going to go on the weekends anyway, because that's where the stuff to do is. And it kills me. Like, we lost that human capital because we don't have enough stuff for them to do.
Fun stuff.
Not
boring old person stuff.
I mean, we lost the bowling alley. Southern Bowl is no more.
Thanks
the
a lot,
movie
Ray
theater.
Skillman, buying it for your shop or whatever.
Yeah. If you want tires and that's fun to you, I guess we got that. But
Jeez, I mean, Ray's done a great job with building that business, but man, he owns a lot around here.
yeah. and AMC just went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So we're losing
Thanks,
our movie
COVID.
theater.
Yeah.
I mean, malls across the state are suffering. So, I mean, the mall's not really the attraction where...
Well, the Dave and Buster's is...
Dave and Buster's going in is going to be good. But, I mean, you don't have to come into Greenwood for that. That's right off County Line Road.
That's true.
You go to Dave and Buster's, you barely come in and you leave. So I would love to see something like that.
What are some of your ideas of what you'd love to see?
I mean,
I'd like to see a bar. I'd like to see a legit
a sports bar. A sports
bar would be a good idea. I'm not into sports, but sports bar would be
that
great.
type of thing where it's like, it's not just, a bar where you just sit there and there's like one like a Peppers or something like. I don't want something like that. Not something like that.
Don't say that.
Maybe more like a Kilroy's or something like that. Something like
cool.
that.
Yeah. I like a Bojack's kind of feel. We recently went to Bojack's.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is kind of like, why does Greenwood not have something like this? I don't want to drive to Franklin. I like Franklin a lot.
Yeah.
I don't want to drive to Franklin to go to a bar.
Yeah.
But I understand there's people out there that say, I don't want the riffraff. Because when you have a bar, you will have riffraff, and especially with bars being closed in Indianapolis, riffraff is coming down to Franklin.
Yeah.
And the bouncers there, we were talking to them, and we were like, so how's it going here? Well, it sucks because all the bars are closed. They close at like, what was it, 12 o'clock?
Yeah,
or something.
Like that.
And everyone goes down to the exterior bars on the donut counties, and then they're just, there's too many people in them, and there's people from different backgrounds, and guys are, there's frat boys from Franklin that are just acting like frat boys, and then there's guys that come down from Indianapolis that are used to being, in a different culture, different environment downtown, which I cannot stand going downtown. It's too many people bumping into each other. You get guys that are high testosterone wanting to fight. Then you got the stupid frat boys. I'm not saying everyone in Franklin's stupid, but you get the frat boys that are like popped collar, what's up? And then there's issues. Yeah. So I totally get it, but to have a bar in Greenwood that we could go to and have fun in, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, where the old middle school was, I think presents a great opportunity to do that.
And for anybody who does not know where the old middle school is,
it's at Smith Valley and Madison Meridian in downtown. And the middle school that Nick and I went, you went there. You went to that middle school building. You're not that much younger than
Nick is in who?
Oh.
My brother Nick?
Matt. I'm on Matt's show.
So, me and Nick went to it, but did you go there? We are the same age.
You went to C9, right?
Yeah. So that's all right.
Matt,
it happens all the time.
Hey, you said on your podcast with your brother, like, just try. So I tried. Yeah. Hey, I got it wrong. Now I know.
I appreciate it.
I've only been texting you and watching like Matt Stumpo's podcast.
Hey, more that's whatever. So,
anyway,
I went to that middle school. I loved it there.
I loved it too. My parents went there too.
Did they really?
Yeah.
When it closed, we did some. There were some trainings that went on there with where I work, and it was so. I had a feeling, a blast from the past. Being headlocked and dragged down the hallway and then pushed into the lockers. Like, I just remembered all that stuff, and I said fond memories.
Funny story, not to get too far off topic, but when they closed that middle school, they did an auction on things that were still in the building.
I forgot they did that.
My wife was so mad at me for how much money I spent on just random crap from that middle school. I mean, I got some of it in my garage right now. And
what'd you buy?
So some teacher had like a Brickyard concession stand sign. Wow. That said like Brickyard burgers, hot dogs, and stuff like this. I got like a little tin Greenwood trash can. It's like green and yellow.
That is funny.
The one that she really hates that I'm still trying to get rid of stuff from it is I wanted a basketball jersey. They still had a bunch of basketball.
Did they really?
They still had a bunch of like jerseys and stuff. And I was like, I want a basketball jersey I wore. And I was like, that's one of my main things. And they had a tub, like, a Rubbermaid tub, like pretty big, just full of the entire teams
So you had to
jerseys.
buy the entire
I
thing?
bought the entire thing. I have like 12 to 20 middle school boy sized basketball.
It makes it
jerseys.
kind of worse. You're sitting there just smelling it all. Like,
And then come to find out, I didn't even wear those jerseys. They were from grades after me. So I have these ones. I didn't even wear them. I got my number. But so yeah, I have these ones, and she's like, "When are you going to get rid of those? They're taking up space." And it's like, "Oh, I'm trying." So I got rid of about half of them, but I still have a bunch. So I've shown up to play like pickup basketball in a full like gold Greenwood basketball outfit, and I looked ridiculous, but what else do you do with it?
yeah. I remember when I would be driving through right next to the old middle school when it was still open, and I'd see the kids wearing the green shorts.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't like the nice
Cloth
basket. It was,
shorts.
yes, it
Cloth
was the cloth.
shorts.
Disgusting looking, like looks like maybe 50 kids have worn that.
You say that, and I just smell Axe body spray.
Exactly.
Like something about even the word is just like giving
just
me.
the locker room alone smelled absolutely horrible. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
But that's where my memories were made.
Yeah.
And to see that building is gone now, and only the North Gym is there.
Yeah,
and,
it sucks.
But like your idea on refurbishing it and creating it into a fun environment for people, that would be awesome to have small businesses be started there.
Mm-hmm.
Some really fun, interactive businesses there. That would be cool.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to talk about, so to get a little deep here, wanted to talk about you lost your father.
Yep.
And when did that happen?
He died in 2016.
2016. And to see where you're at now in your life, I'd say you're a pretty successful guy. I'd say that you are pretty well driven. So do you think that you learned a lot of that stuff from your dad?
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of where I'm at is from my parents, both in life and I would say spiritually. And the fun, and not funny, but the ironic thing is spiritually, the end of my dad's life brought me back to religion. And that is something like, even when he was gone, it was like he was still teaching me. And so he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma my freshman year at IU. And that is your bone marrow blood. And so it's pretty aggressive. It's I guess if you're looking for things similar, it's kind of like leukemia type of deal. And he fought that. And so my freshman year, it would have been 2009, 2010. And so he fought that for a while. He got to see me graduate.
That's awesome.
But while he was sick, I was very involved with my youth group growing up. We went to church where my mom taught, and I was very involved. I traveled, went to some cool places, made some great friends. But there were some politics with a youth minister at the time that's no longer at the church, that it wasn't convenient for the popularity of the youth group that when I broke up with a girl that was also in the youth group that provided, places for them to hang out and things like that. It wasn't convenient for them to side with my side of the breakup, to make short story. And so that upset me. I still had friends in the youth group. There were still people that stayed in touch. But when my dad got sick, the youth group just wasn't there. The youth minister wasn't there. And I had a lot of animosity towards the church in general for that. And even on his last days, ministers would come from our church, talk with my dad. My dad would, his faith never wavered. No matter how sick he got, his faith never wavered. And after he was gone, I just thought, why am I so mad? This one person that's not even there anymore did me wrong, but my dad had cancer and, never second guessed anything. And so that really brought me back to church, the same church. And that was huge for me. And I credit my dad for that because, I mean, it's funny. When I decided to get baptized, my dad was not a believer. Really? When I was little. And, you know, I'd go home. I was in private school as a little kid, and I'd go home and I'd talk to him about, you know, how excited I was. And I'd go to church with my mom. And
hey, let me tell you about Jesus.
Yeah. And I actually came out, I think I was in 3rd grade. I came out to be baptized, and my dad was standing in the baptismal waiting for me. And I had no idea. And he actually baptized me, and then the children's minister baptized him. So That's awesome. You could say I brought my dad to Christ, and then on his way out, he brought me back. And so that's something that I've always kept in mind, like, regardless of what you're going through, like, your faith can always be there. Like, it's okay to question. It's natural to question faith. You can always do that. But just know that even when you question it, God's there. Your faith's there.
He's always there.
Always there. So that's a big thing. And then, I mean, even with city council, after I graduated school, college, I was home, and, you know, my dad and I would sit down, we'd talk local politics, we'd talk local projects, and I said, you know what, maybe someday I'll run for mayor. Maybe someday I'll run for city council, and, you know, I'll make some of these decisions. And we just shot that around, and there wasn't much behind it. I mean, I was 22 years old at the time. And the election just came up, and I said, you know what? No better time than now. And I did it. And I ran, and it was something that he and I had always talked about. And that was an emotional night, the night I won the primary, because I didn't give up on it. And I knew it was something he had wanted me to do. And my parents taught me from an early age, if you want to do something or you don't like the way things are doing it, don't wait for somebody else to do it yourself. And I've done everything that way. My dad always taught me it doesn't matter what job you're doing, whether you're scooping dog poop or whatever, be the best at it. Try your hardest. And I kind of lost that in school. School was maybe the one place, like, I didn't really try that hard. But you know, I've worked my way up to a place that, you know, if you would have asked me back when I was in college, you know, I'd say, no way. Like, no way. Like, I won't make that far. And it's just the determination my parents gave me, and just working to always better myself, because there's nothing that I can't handle. God won't let that happen.
That's right. There's nothing that he won't give you that he knows you can't handle. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a pretty good story. I didn't expect how deep that was pretty good.
No problem.
Well, awesome, dude. Well, we're almost at an hour and a half. So my camera is about to die, it lasts about an hour and 40 minutes at most. Yeah. But dude, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm really good. I think we had a great discussion. Yeah. I know I'd love to have you back on again.
Hey, no problem.
So
be happy to do it.
Where can people find you at? Do you have like a Twitter, Instagram? Do you have just Facebook only?
Right. So for political stuff, I have a page. It's Bradley Pendleton for Greenwood City Council. And I'm on there about every other week. You can message me on there through that. I have my personal Facebook, Twitter, and all that stuff. I don't really get too much on Facebook other than post pictures of my kids and all that stuff. Too many people arguing on Twitter or on Facebook for me, so stay off of that. I'm looking at you, Jay. So yeah, city council stuff, it's mainly Facebook. I don't really have anything else.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think we had a great discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Awesome. So
enjoyed it.
If you guys liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I really highly suggest commenting on it. If you have any questions on anything, I'll relay it to him, and then I'll be able to kind of direct you towards him. But if you guys comment on it, it just kind of helps the algorithm, and also just subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have a blessed day.